the promise of the Spirit. Faith, hope, and love abide, and so every soul is blessed and made whole. The truth in our hearts is our guide. We are answering the call of love. Hands joined together as hearts beat as one. Emboldened by faith, we dare to proclaim. We are answering the call of love. Sometimes we build a barrier to keep love tightly bound, corrupted by fear, unwilling to hear, denying the beauty we found. We are answering the call of love. Hands joined together as hearts beat as one. Emboldened by faith, we dare to proclaim. We are answering the call of love. A bright new day is dawning, when love will not divide. Reflections of grace in every embrace, fulfilling the vision divine. We are answering the call of love. Hands joined together as hearts beat as one. Emboldened by faith, we dare to proclaim. We are answering the call of love. We are answering the call of love. Hands joined together as hearts beat as one. Emboldened by faith, we dare to proclaim. We are answering the call of love. We are answering the call of
We acknowledge that we are residents or visitors on land that was never ceded by the Nisenan people, who are still here among us despite the fraudulent removal of their federal tribal recognition. We seek to help correct their erasure and exclusion from California history and to support their efforts to stabilize their people.
Good morning. And welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Community of the Mountains. I am Gracie Kendrick, and I will be your worship leader this morning. This morning, I'd like to offer a very special welcome to those of you who are here for the very first time, as well as those of you who are here for the second, or the seventh, or the 700th time. You are all welcome. Whatever your race, country, creed, color, gender, or sexuality, you are welcome. This morning, some of us are bringing our very best selves to this space, and some of us are bringing our struggling selves, including pieces that we might be ashamed of. All of us are welcome here, and all of us are loved. Together we affirm that this day and our being together can make each of us braver, more compassionate, and wiser than when we woke up this morning. We welcome you. I invite us today to be especially tender as we delve into the 8th principle of Unitarian Universalism, a principle that will be voted on by our entire association in spring of 2023. There are so many feelings that surface when we look at and talk about this principle. We thought that the best place to start would be in our hearts. For thousands of years, spiritual teachers have pointed to the heart as the seat of consciousness. And recently, Western science has found evidence to support this realization. It turns out that the heart has its own central nervous system and is not simply under the rule of the brain, as was formerly believed. So I'd like to invite us all now into a heart meditation. So we're going to use our hands for this heart meditation. You're going to take your hands, three last fingers are going to point down, making an L. You got this. And then we're just going to touch the index fingers and the thumbs. And we're going to place this diamond just right in front of your heart. And if you wish, you can close your eyes. And if you want to leave your eyes open and your gaze soft, that's fine too, whatever you're comfortable with. We're just going to imagine now that we're breathing in the light of the sun, and it's coming from the outside of this diamond into your heart, directly into your heart. So breathing that light of the sun in, and then as you breathe out, breathing out this light and love into this room from yourself, from your heart. And then inhale, bringing in and breathing in that golden healing light of the sun right into your heart. And on the exhale, we'll breathe out this light and love from your heart to all the people in this room. Inhale, light of the sun into your heart. And this time on the exhale, breathing out this light and love from your heart to our community. Inhale, breathing in golden healing light. And on the exhale, from your heart space, sending light out across our country to every state in the country. And now we'll inhale once more, breathing in that golden healing light of the sun. And on the exhale, sending this out from your heart all over the world, all over the globe, a big circle of love and light. And finally, we're going to take this light in now, the beauty, the golden light of the sun into the heart. And now take your right hand and onto your heart, and your left hand on top of your right hand. And just take this light in for you and allow your heart to be warmed by this light. And take a moment to feel now this light start to spread throughout your body, down into your torso, your legs, and your feet, this golden healing light. And then letting the light move up from your heart into the shoulders, down your arms, into your hands. And this light moving into your neck and your face, your head. So every cell in your body is alive with this golden healing light. And when you're ready, you can just let the hands come back down and your eyes open. Welcome.
We light our flaming chalice as a beloved people united in love and thirsting for restorative justice. May it melt away the tethers that uphold whiteness in our midst. May it spark in us a spirit of humility. May it ignite in us a radical love that transforms our energy into purposeful action. This is a chalice of audacious hope. This chalice shines a light on our shared past, signaling our intentions to listen deeply, reflect wisely, and move boldly towards our highest ideals.
Good morning. Today, we're looking at what it means if we adopt the eighth principle. The eighth principle begins as the other seven do. We, the member congregations of the Unitarian Universalist Association, covenant to affirm and promote, and the eighth principle would read, journeying towards spiritual wholeness by working to build a diverse and multicultural beloved community by our actions and accountability, dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and in our institutions. Well, what commitment are we making if we adopt the eighth principle? I want to share just some very brief history and some reasons that we might want to adopt this. First, I want to define two terms that I will use in here. One is BIPOC. Some of you already know what this is, but BIPOC stands for Black, Indigenous, People of Color. The other term I use will be General Assembly, and that's the annual gathering of all of the UU churches, and it's where we conduct our business, do spiritual renewal, and some workshops. So just a little bit about the history. Some of you might be hearing about the eighth principle for the first time. And actually, the work was started back in 2013 by Paula Cole Jones in our BIPOC UU community. And UUs have done a good job of dismantling racism in the past. We supported the civil rights movement in the 60s, and that was largely due to the request of Dr. King. After that, we defunded our support because of a financial crisis. This led to a terrible conflict, and after which many African Americans left UU. In 1992 and 1997, General Assembly passed a resolution to become an anti-racist, anti-oppression, multicultural organization. But UUs have a mixed record in other areas of racial justice. There were people on both sides of abolition, including people like a Unitarian, Jefferson, who was also a slaveholder. And some UUs were proponents of eugenics. Most recently, in 2017, the UUA president resigned over inclusivity issues in hiring. General Assembly then commissioned a study of the incident and published a report in 2020 entitled Widening the Circle of Concern. Modern Unitarianism and Universalism were both being created at the same time as whiteness and chattel slavery were invented in the United States. Originally, Unitarians often did not treat Native peoples well. They benefited from slavery, and some were actually leaders in the eugenics movement. In 1912, Egbert Ethelred Brown was ordained as a Unitarian minister in the United States, but no American Unitarian church would have him as their minister. In 1920, the Unitarian Association refused to allow him to start his own Unitarian church in Harlem. He called out this hypocrisy of the Unitarian denomination for speaking about the brotherhood of all men, while at the same time practicing segregation in their churches. The principles sounded good, but there was little conviction behind it. You can read more about Egbert on a plaque in the lobby, because we have named that room after him. What is the importance of the eighth principle, and why should we consider adopting it? It came from a feeling that we need to do something to renew our commitment to this work and to hold ourselves accountable and to fulfill the potential of our existing principles. What might be some of the reasons to adopt the eighth principle? One, it emphasizes our commitment and keeps it in front of us. A person can believe they're being a good UU by following the 7 principles without thinking or dealing with racism and other oppressions at a systemic level. For people identified as white, it is too easy to ignore racial issues, which is exactly what keeps the system of racism in our society alive. What we need to do is decenter whiteness. Number 3, it compels white UUs to hold themselves accountable to communities of color, to make sure whites do what they say they will do. Number 4, compels BIPOC UUs to hold each other accountable, to help each other and see and dismantle signs of internalized racism. 5, it respects BIPOC UUs by adopting the 8th principle and establishing a commitment to do what they are asking us to do. 6, actively commits us to the first principle, inherent worth and dignity of each person. And then at the same time, the 7th principle, which is the interdependent web of life, or the system in which we live. It declares, number 7, it declares that UU principles are living documents and reflect the times that we live in. Unlike doctrine, they are not stagnant, but are subject to change as the demands of our world have changed. And 8, it makes a statement to the world that we are committed to practicing anti-racism and addressing systemic racism issues. May our worship service today hold up the worthy values and the principles of UUism.
I have a story for you this morning, and like many stories, it's aimed not just at the child on the lap, but at the grown-up who's reading the words. This, my friends, is a banned book in many parts of the country. Let's dive in. Anti-Racist Baby by Ibram X. Kendi with illustrations by Ashley Lukashevsky. Anti-racist baby is bred, not born. Anti-racist baby is raised to make society transform. Babies are taught to be racist or anti-racist. There's no neutrality. Take these 9 steps to make equity a reality. 1, open your eyes to all skin colors. Anti-racist baby learns all the colors, not because race is true. If you claim to be colorblind, you deny what's right in front of you. 2, use your words to talk about race. No one will see racism if we stay silent. If we don't name racism, it won't stop being so violent. 3, point at policies as the problem, not people. Some people get more, while others get less, because policies don't always grant equal access. 4, shout, "There's nothing wrong with people!" Even though all races are not treated the same, we are all human, anti-racist baby can proclaim. 5, celebrate our differences. Anti-racist baby doesn't see certain groups as better or worse. Anti-racist baby loves a world that's truly diverse. 6, knock down the stack of cultural blocks. Anti-racist baby appreciates how groups speak, dance, and create as they choose. Anti-racist baby welcomes all groups voicing their unique views. 7, confess when being racist. Nothing disrupts racism more than when we confess the racist ideas that we sometimes express. 8, grow to be an anti-racist. Anti-racist baby is always learning, changing, and growing. Anti-racist baby stays curious about all people and isn't all-knowing. And 9, believe that we shall overcome racism. Anti-racist baby is filled with the power to transcend, my friend, and doesn't judge a book by its cover, but reads until the end. Speaking of anti-racist babies, I invite us to sing our children all on their way to Kids Connection.
William Barber II has been teaching for many years that growth in people's awareness of the inequities rooted in racism and the resulting attempts to change the way things are would be met not only with resistance, but also with a backlash, an attempt not simply to hold things where they are, but to push things backward. He told us to expect that, to plan on it. It's always been so, he noted. He's taught that backlash is evidence not of failure, but of some measure of success, of progress. It's evidence of forward movement, and thus the pushback. I've turned to that insight many times to find hope and encouragement in the pushbacks flaring in our times. It means that the status quo is being meaningfully threatened. And so I read the spirit of these days as a mixed blessing and worry. That the eighth principle is needed, that it's being pursued, adopted now by more than 200 UU congregations, that it's being resisted, all of that raises both hope and sorrow. I intend to speak to the eighth principle more personally on September 4th when we look at living all of these principles we've been talking about. Today, I would add my encouragement to adopt this principle as a congregation come next spring, even before the association votes on it, to learn what you need to learn to vote for it honestly and with conviction. And in the meantime, to open yourself up to the complex sorrow and joy of it all. The name of our Sunday ritual of joys and sorrows gives the impression that there are two categories, but much of the time we're living and lifting up a tangled blend. So much in our lives is both welcome and unwelcome at the same time. So as you search your heart this morning for what is stirring there, what is moving you, what is dancing in you, what you're wrestling with in you, I invite you to listen for those complex interweavings of joy and sorrow, as well as the things that come closer to the end of that spectrum. If you're at home, I invite you, if you wish, to type into the chat some measure of what you're holding in your heart. And if you're here in the room, I invite you to come forward, if you wish, to take a stone, one of these stones brought as gifts by members of the congregation and friends of the congregation, to place it in the bowl of water, this very visceral ritual of both listening inward, but also acknowledging it, even in this quiet way, in a public setting. I invite us to search our hearts, to lift up our own prayers and intentions during this time, and very thoughtfully to hold each other as we do so. Here with Olivia's music, I invite you to come forward and to spend time in your heart and with each other. I've placed stones for all that's being named online in the chat, and stones for all that we're holding that might not have a stone up here otherwise. And in the midst of all that's going on in the world and in our lives, I would today come close in for a moment and name 3 people, 3 members of the congregation. There are 3 surgeries this week, 3 days in a row. Wednesday was Tracy Pepper's surgery. I was to hold Tracy in mind and heart and love and light and prayer. She's up and walking. Thursday was Pam Kaiser's surgery. Pam's been in a lot of pain and continues to be, although surgery did what it needed to do, it appears. I invite you to hold Pam in love and care and light and prayer. And Friday was Wally Holton's knee surgery. I invite you to hold Wally in light and love and prayer and care. And of course, their spouses and family members and loved ones who care for them. For all of them, may it be freedom from pain that is the outcome of this journey. And as we prepare to hear another kind of meditation, I would invite us to hold a shared and loving silence. We did this yesterday as part of the spirituality sharing circle, which we've been doing. We take some time of silence in the middle. And yesterday, when we finished, it felt exactly like I had received a massage, which does not happen when I'm silent at home alone. I invite you to hold each other in the silence, knowing that it's more than the silence. It's more than you. It's more than us that we surface in our midst. Blessed be.
What will it mean to decenter whiteness in a mostly white congregation? What will be left?
Every time someone brings up systemic racism, I feel guilty. How do I get past that?
They say Sunday morning is the most segregated time in America. Is it naive to think that people of color will want to come to UU?
Don't the 7 principles we have cover all the bases?
Why is the 8th principle so wordy? Can we edit it?
Aren't there more pressing issues facing us, like climate change?
I'd rather not think about all this. Do I have to?
Why single out racism as a problem in the UUA? What about sexism or LGBTQIA plus issues?
What does it mean that we're going to hold ourselves accountable to communities of color? How is that going to work in Nevada County?
Good morning. Over the past decade or so, I've been growing my consciousness of racism, the water that we, all of us, even people of color, swim in. Or as I'm coming to understand, are drowning in. Yes, I did just make an assumption, and I have yet to discover an instance where that assumption doesn't bear out. Since I continually strive to see what's really in this water I'm swimming in or drowning in, I try to poke my head above the surface just to catch a breath and get a glimpse to look around at what I don't even know is there. Resmaa Menakem, the author of My Grandmother's Hands, who explores the ways we hold racism in our bodies, writes, "For white Americans, the most important task in dissolving white body supremacy involves separating whiteness from supremacy. Blending the concepts of whiteness and supremacy together has resulted in large numbers of Americans who are white, racist, and proud to be both. An even larger number who are white, racist, and in reflexive denial about it. And another large number who are white, progressive, and ashamed of their whiteness. Menakem points out that all of these are forms of immaturity. All can be trauma responses, and all harm African Americans and white people, white Americans. Of course, this isn't just a black and white thing. Andrew Lee, a writer for the Anti-Racism Daily newsletter, describes white supremacy as a system of multiple parts that work together, rather than a collection of individual acts of white violence. Lee tells us this system depends on settler colonialism, which is when outside people come in to settle and take over land that's already inhabited. So this system of white supremacy depends on settler colonialism and the continued theft of indigenous land, the enslavement and incarceration of Black people, and xenophobia and neo-colonialism, the way we're doing that today, against anyone defined and identified as foreign. The product of ongoing institutionalized racism is persistent white supremacy. When we work, open a bank account, cast a ballot, form a family, shop, and I would add, buy a home, we are all engaging with inequitable, exclusionary, or oppressive institutions. Lee teaches that racial inequalities and inequities are so seamlessly embedded and produced by our everyday lives that it's become routine. The water we swim or drown in. Racism is the default. This is because all of these systems were built on blending whiteness with supremacy. White people have been sold a lie that racism no longer exists in 2022. I have personally heard white people say this to me. My question is always, how would you know? And then, if someone who is living the experience tells you otherwise, what would it take for you to believe it? What would it take for you to believe them?
As we were planning for this service, we realized the incredible passion and wisdom on this topic that lives in our young leaders. We are so grateful this morning to welcome Aspen Kendrick Cisneros and Olivia River Sampson up here for an insightful Q&A moderated by Allison River Sampson.
Let's take a breath. Liv and Aspen, I have some questions for you. We'll start with you, Liv. Do you ever see instances of racism in Nevada County? If so, where and in what ways?
Well, I think that this is actually a very interesting question because, like, sort of how you were saying, like, I think I'm guilty to a certain extent of, like, thinking that there, you know, that in just with the Black Lives Matter movement and just how much we talk about anti-racism, at least like in my household, and it just seems like more in our culture, I would expect there to be, you know, a lot less blatant racism than I actually see. And in going to Nevada Union last year, which is the sort of main high school in the area, if you didn't know that, I was really shocked and appalled at the amount of racism that I witnessed. And just every day I saw or heard something that just shocked me and was, you know, like there was just so many instances. And I'll tell you about a couple, and these were not, you know, isolated incidents. This was just something that I heard and had no repercussions. It's just something that I saw or heard some random day as a representation of things I heard and saw almost every day. One was we were doing a sort of a game on an online platform, and we were to come up with nicknames that weren't our actual name for, like, on this online platform. And a student used as their nickname not the actual N-word, but something close to it. And there were no repercussions to this, just like we don't, like, just close the game, like we don't do this. There was nothing else other than that. And another day, we were learning about how to negotiate our salary, and a white student was negotiating with a black student and asked if they could have one free N-word pass every day as their salary. And nothing happened. This was just something I happened to overhear. And this, I've heard from some of my friends who are people of color, that just getting up and going to school and getting through the day every day is a challenge for them, and that they experience this, like, blatant racism every single day. So believing that in this day and age, racism is not a problem and that it's not still a real thing that we need to address is just naive and not true.
Thank you, Liv.
And for me, I've also seen it in my school community, and not just with the students, but with the administration as a whole. One of my fellow students who's in the grade above me wrote a poem about being a brown girl in Nevada County. And the school told her for our school talent show last year. And the school told her that it wasn't an appropriate place to share her poem. So eventually, they let her perform it. It was basically the day before the talent show when they told her that she could perform it. And she did it, and her poem was gorgeous. But it made me realize that it's not just an issue with the students and microaggressions that happen on a daily basis, but it really made me see how systemic this problem is. In addition, I have also just heard from my brother about online communities and how racist they can be while he's playing video games. And I know this isn't just Nevada County, but it's people in Nevada County being exposed to this. And especially young children who are hearing slurs on online platforms, and slurs being directed at people that they know, and even some of their friends using slurs. And that can be a very painful experience.
Thank you both. What was your experience regarding the school board meeting with the group against critical race theory? This was the Nevada Joint Union High School District School Board. So there are 5 high schools who are part of this district. And there was a board meeting where a group presented against critical race theory.
Well, I think in going to the board meeting, I just really very quickly came to the understanding that the people who were there presenting against critical race theory really were just very ignorant. Because, well, number one, it's actually a college curriculum. It's not even for high school, so the whole thing was not really relevant. And also, just the points that they made and just everything that they were saying just made it really clear that it was really just older white adults who didn't even have children in the school system or weren't even really involved in the school system, who just wanted an outlet to spread their hatred and racism. And it was just, yeah. And but it was kind of heartening to see that it was really only a small group of people who believed that, and it was a much larger group of people who were there to speak out against this racism. And that was really great to hear. And it also sort of made me realize, I think, that this is probably like how it is in everywhere, where it's like the majority of people want change and want anti-racism, and a small group of people are just speaking really loudly and influencing a lot of people.
What really stood out to me being in person for this meeting was when people were called up to talk about their experiences and their thoughts regarding the group's proposition. I don't even know what their proposition was. They were basically just trying to argue that critical race theory was already in our high schools and we need to purge it out. But what stood out to me were these 2 people that kind of showed the contrast between the group that was there presenting and the people that were there to not like to be against them. So this one man came up and he was not with them, and he said how his daughter was called slurs at an NU football game, and there were no repercussions for that. And how she, who's mixed race, faces racism on a daily basis, like Liv was saying, that she's seen at NU. And this other person came up and talked about how she was horrified at how the American flags were treated at the NU football game, that they were just thrown into the shed. And it kind of stood out, the difference between people prioritizing human lives and actual people above their own mixed and twisted ideals.
Thank you. So we'll start with Aspen this time. How are racism issues being addressed in school curricula?
Well, I have always been a major proponent of reading more diverse books in school curriculum, and that unfortunately has not happened. Even in middle school, during world history, spent maybe a week on Japan. Nothing on South America, really nothing on the indigenous peoples of the Americas at all. Barely anything on Africa. We learned about Mansa Musa for like a day. And other than that, it was all Europe. And that trend carried over into my world history class last year. And my teacher even said she wishes that she could teach us about more diverse subjects, but it is in the California curriculum that she is required to teach more about European history than others, and that there is simply not enough time, according to the California school curriculum, to teach about other cultures and other pieces of world history. In addition, my English teacher had us read To Kill a Mockingbird, which of course is a very good book. And even though it might not be the best example of anti-racism out there, it's still pretty good, and you can take a lot of good lessons from it. So he assigned our essay at the end of it, and I was a little bit shocked at what we were required to write about. We were required to write about how brave the racist old lady was for standing up for her ideals. And this was, we couldn't change it, we couldn't pick what we were supposed to write about. This was what we were going to be graded on. And I felt very angry. And I was just like shocked because my teacher, he has the ability to choose what our essay topics are. And he's someone that I respect, and to think that he would choose this, and I was just very astounded that it would happen. I could go on for so long, and especially about book bans in schools and in school libraries, and that these books are selected just for having these divisive or pedophilic topics, and which was pretty much a direct quote from this lady that was talking about banning LGBTQ books. And it makes me so sad to know that kids all over the country are not being allowed to see their identities represented in their school libraries because their identity is pedophilic, according to a random person who apparently has influence over the library. And it's so difficult to watch in the school curriculum. But there are pieces of the school curriculum that are being represented. I just took the English 1A course through Sierra College this summer, and we read Just Mercy by Brian Stevenson. And my teacher assigned such wonderful reading questions and wonderful TED Talks about it. And it was one of the best experiences I've had with confronting racism and especially in our country through the school curriculum. And it gave me a little bit of hope that we could change and grow and be able to learn.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's really great. And what you were saying about To Kill a Mockingbird, we read To Kill a Mockingbird also in my class this year. Our final essay was a lot better than yours. But I still think that I thought it was, really great that we were reading about that so that we would know like about the history of what Black people have experienced in this country. And I felt that my issue with reading such an old book is that I feel like I think that it's possible in reading that, and I heard like from some of my classmates that it's like, oh, well, that was so horrible that happened, and oh, that's so great that it's over. It could be very easy to see that as something that happened, not something that happens today. What To Kill a Mockingbird is about, or what, an idea that it talks about is, it's about a Black man who was wrongfully accused and convicted of raping a white woman. And this happened because of racism. And it's taught that happened because of the Jim Crow laws. And I think it could be very easy to be like, oh, well, the Jim Crow laws aren't around anymore, so it won't, happen. But it's not true, because, like, the Jim Crow laws aren't, maybe, like, the same as they were, but they still show up in the culture. And I think that, or I know that exact scenario still happens today. So reading about something that happened in the past can kind of give the misconception that it doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah, and if I can just add on to that, when we were reading Just Mercy, he talked about how the main case, which is a Black man wrongfully accused of murder, and this was in Monroe County, the same county that Harper Lee, author of To Kill a Mockingbird, grew up in and wrote her book about. And he mentions how the people were so proud of this book, and they were so proud of how Gregory Peck was at their courthouse. And then they just go and they turn their backs on this man who was wrongfully accused. The same scenario. And he also points out how Atticus is described as like, oh, this amazing lawyer because he took on this case and he lost the case. And in the book, the Black man was killed. He was lynched. So it's just kind of, that shows like how people can be so proud of this like supposedly anti-racist book and yet still go back and just spew out very racist ideals.
Thanks. So we've learned from Color Me Human, I learned from Color Me Human, that Nevada County is the whitest county in California. How has that affected your experience here?
Well, back. And I moved here in 2016 from the Bay Area, which is known to be a very racially diverse place. And even though there's definitely racism in the Bay Area, there's housing segregation and schools that are considered more ghetto than others just because of how more racially diverse they are, it's still a lot more diverse than here. And growing up there in my formative years, I was exposed to a lot of diversity that I would not have been exposed to here. And moving here, I remember touring my new school, coming out and being very bewildered at how many white people there were. And I remember thinking to myself, why is it so white here? And I think that it's just been it's such a different experience being in a place with so much whiteness. And yeah, I don't know what else, but it's just kind of makes that difference very stark.
Thank you.
On speaking to that, I would say, as I have, of course, had my own experiences in living in such a white town, and I would also say that as a white person, my experience in that is probably so much less affected than people of color, and I've in speaking to some people of color who live here, I have heard that it is very, very hard on them living in such a white place, and I cannot speak as much to my experience as I am white myself.
Thank you. And Daryl Grigsby of Color Me Human shared last week that when he was here talking about Color Me Human, that there have been a few families of color who've left this area because it was so hostile to them. Okay, last question. I notice there's a Progress Pride flag hanging over there. Liv, could you explain how this connects to the 8th principle and why it's important?
Sure. So for those of you who don't know, I'll just sort of explain what the Progress Pride flag is. So the Pride flag has gone through many different iterations and designs. I believe that the one over there is the most recent, and it includes the rainbow colors, each which stand for different things and stand for the diversity in the LGBTQ community, which is like just the diversity in gender and sexuality. We're laughing because we volunteered for the Color Me Human booth at the fair, and one of the questions for the spinning wheel was, what do you think the colors in the pride flag represent? So that's why we're laughing. And going back to what I was talking about, though, the black and brown represent like anti-racism and the commitment to being anti-racist and supporting people of color, and the light pink and the light blue represent supporting trans people and non-binary people, and that part in the middle, the end, is yellow, and it has a circle, and that represents support for intersex people. So that just really, I think that flag really represents the 8th principle super well. If you look at the words of it, it's almost exactly what this is about. And I forgot to mention, it's pointing forwards towards, or when it's this way, it's pointing forwards towards progress, and that's what that is for. And I think that it just really represents the 8th principle well, which is really great. And I like that especially that for you to have those beliefs, because I think it's just so special in a spiritual community to commit to these things, because I know that that's not, it's very special, and so it's very important to me personally. So yeah.
Thank you both for sharing your experience and wisdom with us. In the words of author Resmaa Menakem, even though white supremacists created whiteness and then defined it as something that in action looks selfish and closed-minded, it doesn't have to be. Instead, whiteness can mean taking responsibility. This echoes what Rev Kevin said 2 Sundays ago, that our UU progressive religious tradition is rooted primarily in empathy, coupled with the responsibility to act on that empathy. So how can we apply this to whiteness? As a faith tradition, we are in the process of adopting the 8th principle next spring. In a few moments, we will all together have the opportunity to participate in a collective blessing to symbolize our journey toward the 8th principle, to accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and our institutions, including in UUCM. Taking responsibility requires humility and courage. While it may not be easy, will not be easy, if we are to progress, it is necessary. As we endeavor to separate whiteness from supremacy, May we be guided by Brené Brown's words. You can choose courage or you can choose comfort. You cannot have both. My friends, may we choose courage.
It is time to rededicate ourselves to anti-oppression work. This building, this institution, in the words of the eighth principle, stands on a downtown street corner that hundreds of people pass by each day. It affords us an opportunity to proclaim our values in a very tangible way, right on our walls or on our flagpole. And we have done both for many years. And if you've taken a close look at our pride flag or our Black Lives Matter banner, you can see the wear and tear of those many years writ large. As the group of us who helped brainstorm this service were imagining and planning together and learning so much from our young people, we thought today would be the perfect day to dedicate the new banner that the Bending the Arc Toward Racial Justice Task Force had updated the wording for, one that member Catherine Young created the graphic design for. And I invite those of you who are here in person today to come out immediately after the service to witness the unveiling of the new Black Lives Matter banner. But that's not all. We have this new Progress Pride flag that's going to go up on our flagpole. This one was donated by Mags. Thank you, Mags. And you heard from Olivia what it symbolizes. So we felt that because this flag actively includes people of color, and because the eighth principle calls out racism and other oppressions, that it was appropriate to include in today's celebration along with the Black Lives Matter banner. When these things hang on or near the building that is our place of worship, they hold us visibly accountable to our community. Anyone could ask, what are you doing for Black lives? As a way of honoring that, let us pass this flag through our hands. It's going to symbolize in this instance the banner that we can't touch and this flag which is here. So blessing it as it passes hand to hand. We'll pass it across each row from front to back, and everyone will have a chance to lay hands on it. For those of you at home, its last bit of travel will be in front of the camera. And I invite you to put your words of blessing in the chat. As it comes through your hands, if you're moved to do so, I invite you to speak a word of blessing. It could just be blessing. Or to say the name of someone dear to you whose life is celebrated by this flag or the Black Lives Matter banner. Let us begin. There it is for all to see. It was a lovely view from up front, watching the flag wend its way through all of your hands. You took such care. I could see it on your faces, and many of you a lot of joy in handling that flag. And so the flag and the banner will contain a piece of us, each of us, as they fly and decorate our space. Thank you. Thank you for blessing the flag and the Black Lives Matter banner. They're going to proclaim our ideals to all who pass by. May each of these be a comfort to those they symbolize, and may they remind us as we enter and leave this building that there is work to be done, and we are called to do it. So the eighth principle specifically calls out our actions, not just talking about building beloved community, but that we take actions to make it so. One of those actions is surely donating money. Here at UUCM, we are working to build beloved community, a concept coined by Josiah Royce, who was born and raised right here in Grass Valley. Part of how we do that is by donating 25% of our Sunday collection to a local nonprofit partner that reflects our values. How fitting it is that in the month of August, our partner nonprofit is Color Me Human, which celebrates and supports the under-resourced communities in California's second whitest county, or first whitest. We keep trading places. Founded by new UUCM member Tracy Pepper, Color Me Human's mission is to celebrate, elevate, educate, advocate, and create a safe, equitable world for Black, Indigenous, people of color, and LGBTQ+ folks. While UUCM is affiliated with the National Unitarian Universalist Association, we receive no funding from there. This community is independently funded by our members and our Sunday donations. Thank you for your generosity. Listen for the options on how to give.
Your
You can listen
generosity
to me.
remains
Oh, there
essential
it is.
to our ability to sustain the work of our community. There are several ways to contribute. You may text an amount to 833-579-0483, give via our website at uugrassvalley.org, via PayPal at paypal.me/UUCM, or mail to UUCM 246 South Church Street, Grass Valley, California, 95945. Thank you.
And for those in the room, you may also put a donation in one of the baskets. If you wish for your entire cash donation to go to Color Me Human rather than 25%, please put it in the white envelopes in the baskets. dedicate these offerings to our highest ideals. May ours be a world that can transcend racism, and may each of us continue to grow and find ways to be actively anti-racist every day.
That concludes our service. I bet it would not be over without all of the thank yous to every person who helped put this together. So I thank Allison River Sampson, Lindsay Dunkel, Janet Dunstan for being part of this planning team. And especially I want to thank this morning Aspen Kendrick Cisneros and Olivia River Sampson for your contribution in the Q&A and also in the planning and the beautiful music. Olivia and Kevin and Toby, thank you so much. The setting with here today, thank you Shanti for the beautiful flowers that we have up front and the setting. And the chat host this morning is Eileen Hale. Thank you for being there, Eileen, and doing that. I also want to thank, I don't see his name up here, but Kern Hildebrand, who I have not met yet, but I can't wait to. A super nice guy who helped so much. Hi. With the hanging of the banner and really owning that and helping with that and taking care of that. So thank you so much. And our production crew in the back. We have, let's see, where are those people? Oh, the AV team, sorry. Siobhan and Gary, thank you so much. And on production, we have George Dunstan and also Corey Silva who does. And Elizabeth Rose is providing refreshments outside along with Shannon and Dooley Miller. And thank you all for being here and bringing your heart and bringing your light so that we can share this message together. And who? Oh, yes, and the readers, Connie and David and Olivia for the questions meditation. Thank you so much for being a part of that. Very appreciated. And thank you. You're welcome. So we'll have our closing song. Woo! Let's do it.
Invite you to rise in body or in spirit and to sing. From the light of days remembered burns a beacon bright and clear, guiding hands and hearts and spirits into faith set free from fear. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin. From the stories of our living rings a song both brave and free, calling pilgrims still to witness to the life of liberty. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion need to call us
At 23 years old, John Lewis was the youngest and most defiant speaker standing alongside Martin Luther King during his legendary I Have a Dream speech. I'd like to close with his words, spoken on the 50th anniversary of that speech. Sometimes you have to not just dream about what could be. You get out and push and you pull and you preach, and you create a climate and environment to get those in high places, to get men and women of goodwill in power to act. Please join us outside after service for refreshments, and together we will raise the new flag blessed with your prayers and intentions and unveil a message to our community that is the heart and soul of the 8th principle. And now, let's all together recite our closing words. May we carry the flame of peace and love until we meet again.